Hey everyone, it's Jane here, and I have a lovely woman here with me today. Her name is Sylviana Geoffray, and she's currently in Edinburgh right now. And I'm going to introduce you to her. We met at a Women's Awakening Circle in Edinburgh earlier this year, and I loved speaking to her, and I loved the work she was doing, and I wanted to learn more. And she was in my Facebook group, and I read a post that she posted on a personal story around grounding and rooting, and I thought I have to find out more. And so we connected, and I asked her, invited her if she'd like to share more of her story with you and do an interview with me, and she said yes. So here she is. So welcome, Sylviana.
Thank you, Jane. Thank you for having me.
Great, my pleasure.
Offering this space to talk about things that are close to our hearts and important.
Exactly, yes. So let me just introduce you so people know a little bit about your background, which I found so fascinating. It's like, wow, what a woman. So Sylviana is French and Colombian, and she's lived in Canada for the last 10 years, but she's currently in Edinburgh for 2 years with her family. And her background's in industrial engineering, and she's also been a jewellery designer, designed a jewellery line. She's married with 3 small children, very busy woman, and is also a breastfeeding mentor for an NGO in Canada, helping women and babies to overcome the challenges of breastfeeding in the first 6 months of motherhood. She is a Zumba instructor and teaches Zumba in Edinburgh on Wednesday mornings. For those in Portobello, you should go to her Zumba class. She is a translator for the worldwide movement Mujeres que Despiertan, don't know if I've pronounced that well, which means Women Awakening. And this is a movement started in Colombia to empower women individually and collectively through women's circles, workshops and trainings. And she's currently in charge of doing the translations into English and French, and she's becoming a circle facilitator. And those circles are held in Portobello in Edinburgh. So, wow. So that's a lot. That's a lot. So we're going to dive into find out more and just ask the first question that I'd love to know from you, which is your background is bicultural or tricultural now, really, because you're both French and Colombian, but you've spent a lot of time in Canada and now you're in Edinburgh. So can you tell us a little bit more about how, or if being from 3 different cultures affects your sense of rooting or grounding in yourself?
Yeah, great. Yeah, that's a great question. Indeed, I was raised bilingual. So my mom's Colombian, my dad's French. And since the get-go, I was born in France, but I moved to Colombia when I was 1.5 years old. And both my dad always spoke to me in French, my mom in Spanish. I grew up in the countryside in Colombia, close to Bogota. And I went to a French school. So my childhood and early teens were very much bilingual and bicultural. I was living in Colombia, yet I was going to a French school with French teachers. And so it was both of those cultures that are part of myself from the get-go. And I think in a way, when you've experienced that, you are looking forward to also travel and like leaving your home. It's not something that you're afraid of because your ancestors, your parents have done that.
Yeah.
So I think that's what moved. I mean, I moved to France when I was 15. That wasn't by choice. It was my dad lost his job, and security was very hard in Colombia those years. 2001, there was a lot of kidnapping and with the FARC, and so my family decided, well, there's this other country where we're from. Why don't we go there And so that's what we did. We went as a family there, and I arrived in France to do my last year of high school, and then I went into my undergrad and graduate studies as an engineer, as you said. And it was at the end of that, the career that, the studies that I was offered to go as an exchange student somewhere. And I said, well, great, I would love to be in an English-speaking country, and Canada seemed like an amazing place to go and explore. So I went there, and I was offered a job, and so I stayed. And that's where I stayed 10 years. So basically, like, I'm 33 now, and I've kind of lived in 3 different countries for kind of the same amount of time, and at 3 different periods of my life, and it was in 3 languages. So yes, inside of me lives 3 people. There is kind of a construction like that, because whenever you leave a country, you embrace the new country, and it's also an opportunity for you to become more of who you are, because you don't have your family, your society telling you that knows you and that have shaped you, you know. So it's beautiful opportunities.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, like, is it like you're, you know, because I've traveled a lot, but I think it's very different having big chunks of time in 3 different cultures where it really becomes part of who you are and it's part of your ancestry. But is it that you, when you step into that, you know, moving back to France, for example, that you feel you can start being a new person almost, or express a new part of yourself?
I think you do. And when I first left Colombia, you know, I was 15, and I truly felt that I was cutting my roots. Even though I was going to a country that I've known, because I've gone on holidays, and my dad being French, but it felt, maybe because it wasn't a choice, I really felt like it was a family choice, but it wasn't my own choice. And I felt like I was definitely cutting my roots. And I remember always telling that to my friends, and there was a sense of loss, and a sense of being ungrounded, you know, in a way.
Yeah.
And it took me a while to be grounded again. And it was basically when I arrived to Canada that when I started my own family, that I got a sense of, okay, now my roots are being grounded again, and I can grow. But also with the knowledge, like with the feeling that I was grounding myself in something bigger than a country. I was actually grounding myself into earth, and I was considering myself more of a worldwide citizen, as opposed to being from one country, you know, and especially Canada being very multicultural country.
And a big French-speaking
country. And there's so many cultures, and they really make a point of accepting you and with your background, and everyone can express their own. So it was like a perfect environment for me to kind of reroute. And it was later on. So there was still this sense of rooting into a territory. But then when I come to Scotland, temporary here with my husband and family, I just realized that I needed to root into something less physical. I mean, not less physical, but just rooting in myself, just considering my body as that piece of land that I inhabit, and this is where I have to be grounded. And then the body can then be grounded into earth. But there was this sense of, you know, like my earth expanded, and the safest thing for me to do and what's within my capacity is to ground in my own body.
I love what you said about that the piece of land is your body. Seeing it as a piece of land rather than you going to the land and grounding in the land, which you probably do anyway, but that your body is the land. That's a really lovely image to to remember if you're somebody that moves around a lot as well.
Yeah, your body is your home, basically.
Yes, yeah. So I want to dive into a question about you shared with me that there was a moment where you burnt out when you were, it was around the Paris attacks. I'll let you share a little bit more about that. So I just want to ask you around that story, which you shared already a little bit about in the Facebook group, about how you burnt out and then came back to really digging deep into finding ways to ground yourself and root yourself and feel healed, I suppose, and bring yourself back to life and nourishment and being this piece of land, your body being this piece of land. So can you share with us a little bit about your burnout and then what you actually did, practically, physically, mentally, to bring that journey back to health and well-being?
Yeah, that was almost like exactly 2 years ago that it happened. And I think the circumstances were kind of like the perfect ground. And I shouldn't be using this word, but kind of all the factors were there for me to have a burnout in a way. I had given birth to 3 children in 5 years.
Wow. And how old are your children now?
So my eldest is almost 6, and then my second one is another girl, and she's 4, and then Thomas, my little boy, he's 2.5. So he was born in May. So he was almost 4 months ago. 4 months, sorry. So I have to say that being a mother is one of those very amazing times in your life, but also very demanding in all senses, but particularly in the physical sense, especially after giving birth. Your body has given so much, and I was also breastfeeding, so it's also very demanding on your body. And I would say that, yeah, my body had taken a lot and had given a lot. And then here comes this news from France, from Paris, where I have a lot of family, of this terrorist attack. That was so horrible to see. And it just threw me back also to those times of fear that I experienced in Colombia, in Bogota, when there was bombings and with the time of Pablo Escobar. So it was, but yet I was in the countryside in Canada, in my little house with my family. But I mean, being someone who has a lot of family and friends in other countries, I'm very connected. And at that time, I was very connected to Facebook. And so the news really struck me. And then I kept reading and reading because because I wasn't there, I felt like I had to be informed and what was happening and all the developments. And that's when I started to be very ungrounded, because I was feeding into all the news, and all these news were coming 24/7. And when this happened in another country and my friends were posting things all day long, I just wanted to follow, and I wasn't hearing my body signs. I wasn't hearing anything. I was just soaked into this cloud of, and I think technology today is a main source of like that could be very ungrounding for us. There's no time, no space, and yeah. So for like a week, I was reading and following, and I had also taken a training in nonviolent communication, so I felt like I had a tool that I could share. And sorry, I just pressed the wrong button. And yeah, so I just kept, anyways, I felt also like I had something to say and something to help ease, you know, that pain, that fear, everything that was unfolding. And I felt like everyone's emotions were mine and everything was intermingled. And so yeah, after like 10 days I burnt out. And the way I see it now, because I really like to use images taken from science, and but to me we're like wires that connect. Let's say if we're a wire, we have a certain resistance, and if we nurture the wire, if it's well oiled, or you know, if it's functioning properly, there's a lot of energy that can go through, like current can go through. However, when you're not taking care of that wire, you know, it's starting to get bent, or then all that energy that keeps flowing your way, you know, the energy of life constantly, then the wire doesn't have the capacity to channel that, to get the energy through. And then that's when the wire starts getting really hot and it melts, and that's the burnout. So to me, it was lowering, like not listening and not honoring and respecting my body needs, because I let myself go into this spiral and into this mode of yeah, like yeah, like basically I lost touch with my body. And I think also as being a mother, you give yourself a lot to your children, and there's a part of you that still wants to be part of the world. And I think that part of me was called at that time. And even though I was so far away, I said, I can do something in what I have, you know, that was my Facebook page, or, you know. So there was also that. And I think that was kind of a big lesson for me about honoring that part of myself that is not a mother. That gave me like keys for what the healing and what the recovery would be. So
yeah, I think that is, I'm not a mother, but I hear that's from a lot of women who are mothers, that it's very easy to lose your sense of self, and because you're then giving everything to especially small, you know, children and babies. So yeah, it's important to also come back to listening and honoring your own. And so that sort of leads us a little bit into, you know, how do you actually listen? So that's what your intuition is, I suppose, when you're listening to your body and you're listening to its needs, or not listening, as the case may be, which is also linked to our intuition and how we actually pick up things and how we know when something's good for us or when it's not good for us. So can you tell us a little bit about what that messaging was for you and how it actually arised for you, as well as, you know, what you actually did to help ground yourself again?
Yeah. So what I would say, if I were to describe how I got to the burnout, is all of my attention was outside of myself.
Right.
100%. And I think that is one of the things that happen, can happen to us often, but there's an equilibrium, there's a way of coming back to you. Like sometimes, yes, like right now I was fully listening to you. However, there's a part of me that still needs to stay connected to myself. So it's this balance that I think that totally got broken for myself. So when you say, how do I listen? So the things I've learned, and I'd say this burnout in a way was a blessing, because it was like an extreme experience for me, to learn like the what a lack of balance can lead you to. So one of the things that to me has been key, to get back into balance and also start listening to my intuition, is quieting, learning how to quiet outer and inner noise. And that comes through practices like meditation, that I started doing every morning, 15 minutes. And I used guided meditations first because it was too hard just to be quiet and still. I didn't know how to do that, and it was hard also because of my 3 little children and
I can hear them.
sleep deprivation. Exactly. So it really helped having guided meditations, and I also, and I've come to realize that, you know, when you start taking the time to quiet inside, like quiet the outside and quiet the inside, then you get into at first it goes through stages. Like you don't get into this like internal peace right away. You know, at first there's still a lot of noise, and there's things that need to come up. But the more you do it, the more you practice that, the less things you have to go through in order to get you to a piece of calm and rest, and where you can actually tune in into your intuition. And the beauty of this is that through meditation, it kind of gives you like a point of reference for you to access. And the more you practice, the more you can access that point. So for me now, I'm doing the dishes, and I can connect, and I can get into that space and that state in myself. So I can hear my intuition. So I get a lot of like intuitive moments while I do the dishes, or while I walk the kids to school or go and pick them up. So that's been beautiful, just to understand that there's practices that can take you to a place, and that your brain, your body is wise enough to know how to go back to those places after, without the induction or the external tools, or, you know, be it sound or meditations or guided meditation. But yeah, and just trusting that
right. That was the next word I was going to say, trust. It's trusting that, yeah, our body knows when we go back into that situation. Our body knows what to do. And I love that you bring that practice into the actual things that you do every day, like walking the dishes, doing the dishes and walking the children to school. It's part of what you need to do every day, but it's your meditation as well. And yeah, that's really, because a lot of us have this perception that meditation is, you know, sitting, you have to have a big chunk of time out to sit and go into stillness, and which is lovely and it does work, but also, you know, seeing meditation as something else, like a moving meditation, where it becomes about how mindful you are in the things that you're doing already. Yeah, that's an important thing just to bring into conversation again, and remind us all that we don't need to be sitting on a rock in the Himalayas in a lotus position to meditate. Yeah, and we know how to actually go into it. So
yeah, and I would say that this way of meditating when, oops, sorry, it's like the static meditation, to me, is a very male. It's like a very masculine approach to meditation, and I found myself not resonating with it. Like I know the benefits, and it brings something to me, but if I felt like it was easier for me to do it as I was walking or as I was doing things, and just realizing that I've actually have had those moments all my life, all throughout my life,
Right.
you know. And it's just when you start consciously looking for those times that you realize that they've been there all the time. It's just that you didn't pay enough attention, or you just didn't know that it was. And so yeah, I love the fact this meditation in motion, this practices in motion through dance, through you know, being with another way for me to really connect to my intuition is when I'm with someone, just like we are right now, exchanging about like an important theme. I start getting a lot of information coming down to me, and things that I don't even know are they coming, you know.
And how does that work? Like you said, coming down to you, is it that you kind of just words land in your mind, or you feel it in your body? How does
for
it arrive?
me, it's more of an inner knowing.
Okay.
And that has been hard then to discern between that and, you know, or my ego mind or my thoughts or things that are stored already. Yeah, they come, and yeah, it's through an inner knowing. Sometimes I feel it in my body as well. When I'm having a deep conversation with someone and they tell me something that's very profound or intimate, or then I get goosebumps, and also in my back and in my arms, and sometimes that person also gets the goosebumps, and then we just laugh and say okay. Yeah. And that's beautiful. So those are the ways that, and I think the more I attune to that, then the more sensitive my body has become. And so yeah, it's amazing just how everything's connected. And one of the other things that I wanted to share was that getting in touch, or getting into that space where I get, you know, my inner guidance. In order to get that, I've had to actually do a lot of inner work and a lot of self-exploration. And I think that's one of the things that it's necessary for you to start discerning between your intuition or other, you know, other sources, or and it's, if you don't know what you carry inside, then how would you know where is this coming from? So through a lot of like self-work, and that's why I do the women's circles, and specifically to work on our subconscious. That's a program that was designed by Women Awakening, and it's this like massive assessment of who you are, where you've been, what are your beliefs, and after doing that, it's actually have like, I just brought a light in and looked at all of that. So now I have an inventory, you know, of what I am. So everything that comes new, I know where it's coming from.
That's from some over there, and that's from that person.
Exactly.
And it takes courage, I think, to shine that light, really shine that bright light inside and look at what's sitting there. Because there's often, you know, we find things that we don't want to look at as well, and there's pain and there's challenge and there's beauty, and sometimes it's often our own power that we're, you know, most afraid of shining that light on. But I like that visual image of shining that light, and really being curious enough to look and to explore, and to feel, and come to that place of understanding who am I, and how do I feel the world, and how do I perceive things, and being curious as, how do other people see that or feel that? Because there's differences, but there's a lot of commonalities as well. And so you're talking about, discerning the difference between your inner knowing and your ego. How do you think you do that? It's maybe a complex question, but and I think sometimes we do, and then we don't. So it's not like necessarily, oh, I've sorted that and I'm always going to know what is my inner knowing and what's not. But do you feel like you've come to a place where it's much clearer for you in knowing the difference?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say like now I know exactly where it's coming from, but
Yeah.
I've learned how to trust it, as you say, and I actually take a chance. And whenever I get an information, and it's actually mostly when I'm talking to people,
Mm-hmm.
then I dare to say it and
Ooh.
see what happens.
Okay, let's try it.
Yeah.
We're doing it.
Yeah, like let's say for you, as we were preparing for the interview, I was just seeing like images of Joan of Arc for you, like this very powerful woman who followed her intuition. When to her it came in through voices she heard.
Yeah, right.
And I don't know. I just looking at you and the work you've done and how you've followed your calling and materialize it. And I don't know. I just saw you with an armor and with a flag,
Oh, I like that.
For the feminine, yeah, definitely.
Like a warrior.
Yeah. So you see, like I just saw. In this case, it was an image I saw, but maybe just your name, Jane, and from what I've seen you and your presence, I find there's a lot of strength in you, and almost like a call to follow. So yeah, so that was what came to me, and I share it now, and it happens to me in the streets. And this year I just moved here, and I've at first I didn't know anyone, but I was very open to make new relationships, and I've met amazing women, and because I didn't, to me it was kind of new, all of these unfolded in the last 2 years. So prior to that, I wasn't so in touch with myself, with my intuition, and so I've taken it this like an amazing time where I just get to know people who I've never spoken to, and sometimes I receive information about maybe things that they could be doing, things that call them, and I just say it, and they're surprised, like, how did you know this? Or and so the more I experience that, the more I trust that the information that's coming, and maybe when I feel the call to share, then I just share it, and honoring it. I think it just helps you, and it also gives your brain the cues to stop, because we used to block so much, and we used to stop, and we have so many patterns of stopping that we need to actually revert that. And the more you practice, the more you do it, the more you say it, the more you trust, then the more it becomes clear.
Yeah. And I like that you use the word trust and honoring, because honoring is really about trusting ourselves and trusting like the way that we actually perceive things, the way that we know a certain thing, and following through on that. So it's that was a beautiful way of saying it. It's very self-honoring to learn the language of yourself. And what I find interesting about your experience as well is that you come from quite a science background, and you use that language in sometimes in the way that you describe things, because you studied engineering and design, and you like, I think you like science. You said that to me as well. So well, my question around that was, do you feel that that gives you a different perspective around intuition, or a better way of maybe expressing it, or not even better, but just, the languaging we use around subjects like this, can be often off-putting to some people, or it shuts people down to hear a certain way of saying something. Yeah, I'll just throw that out there if you've got anything to say about that.
Yeah, no, I went into engineering because I loved understanding how things worked. So that was kind of my drive into science, basically. And then I was conditioned by my family. So there's a lot of engineers in my family, and that's why I ended up there. But at the beginning, there was a real enthusiasm to learn how things work. And so I was also very spiritual. Mm-hmm. And I think that one of the things that has happened to me in the last 2 years and after is that I really want to see how everything is connected and it's the same. And I used to have like one box for spirituality, one box for science, and now I'm really seeing how it's all one. And it actually helps me explain spiritual things, and also my spiritual experiences help me understand science in a way,
Yes.
And I think we're coming to this time for humanity to see the bridges and see how it's all one. And I think let's say if I was to explain scientifically or with science kind of what being in tune with my intuition is I just started studying the brain and learning about the different brain waves, and basically understanding that when you go into a meditative state, you actually lower your brain waves. So the frequency your brain lowers down to the alpha waves, and then you can take it lower into delta or theta and delta, which are states that we usually access only when we're asleep. So if you train your brain through the practice of meditation, you can actually access those very low frequencies in your brain without falling asleep. And so the way I say it is, in order to get in tune with your intuition, you actually need to quiet the mind. And how do you quiet down? By lowering its frequency, just like you would turn down a radio station. And then my intuition actually comes from my heart. It comes, so we're a system. So this frequency is going. If you lower this, then you start hearing other sides of you. Right. That's to me when, and it's kind of the work that's been done also by about heart coherence and
like heart math and heart IQ.
Heart math, exactly. Yeah. Like through 15 minutes of you focusing on your heart, breathing deeply, and then there's all these benefits and this really lowering anxiety. And to me, it's, when you focus on your heart, you take the focus out of your mind, and it actually physically is turning it down. And then you can hear other parts of you, and that's when you also can hear more of your body and what your body is telling to you. So I think that's why some people would experience it really through their body, or some people will experience it more through an inner knowing, an inner voice. But those are all things that, that is to me the process.
Yes.
if I were to explain it through science.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I love that. Yeah, you explained it very well, very clear, very full of imagery that I could follow in my mind as well.
Mm.
So I'll ask you a final question for other women out there who maybe don't trust themselves or don't trust their intuition or their own guidance. Is there anything that you would say to them from through your own experience of having gone through burnout and coming back to health, and someone who's moved around and through different cultures and had a very, very rich experience of life, and obviously has had to learn to listen to the different ways your body is speaking, your intuition is speaking. Is there any sort of final thing you would want to say to the people watching this around that?
Yeah, I would recommend, just as I said, like our bodies, like this piece of land that was given to us to experience in the world and to experience life. So I would just recommend you getting really in touch with your body, with your history, with your mind. What's in your mind? What are you carrying? And doing this self-exploratory exercise. Take the time to do it. So first, take the time for yourself.
Number one.
One, and what to do with that time. Just find the things that make you happy. Get in touch with your creative self. That's also another way where I get a lot of I connect really well with my intuition is when I'm creating my jewelry.
Yeah,
it's like kind of people describe it like you're being in the flow.
In the zone.
In the zone, time just goes by. Oh my God, 4 hours and I was just polishing those earrings. But it's just that state, that mind state is the same one. That's where you want to be all the time. But in order to get there, well, first of all, you need to take the time to do activities that bring you into that state. It could be through arts, it could be through dancing, it could be through reading, anything, but walking in nature. Where we have a lot of resources, especially these days where there's so much information about everything. So taking the time, but start studying yourself, because sometimes when we're in this path, we start reading so much and trying to get the books, but in the end, it's you. It's you who you come to explore. So the better you know yourself, then the more you're going to be able to discern and to connect with your intuition and to thrive and fully inhabit this body that's been given to you with your emotions, with your mind, this beautiful brain, that years of evolution, and we just have all of that in us. So yeah, I would say just focus within and
shine that light.
Find that light. Shine the light first. And no one else can do that work for you.
Oh wow, what an incredible conversation. Thank you so much. I know we could talk for a lot longer. There's just so many threads there that we touched on, and so much more that I want to know about you and your journeys and your travels and your experiences. So thank you so much for coming and sharing your wisdom and your experiences with everybody. I will put links to your, if anyone wants to find out where to go for Sylviana's women's circles or Zumba class, or to see some of her jewellery, I'll put links below and a little bit of information about her as well, so you can connect. So yeah, please do connect, share comments, ask questions, and we can stay connected.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
yeah,
Thank you
thank
so
you.
much, Jane. I
Yeah.
really appreciate this time with you and sharing and talking and growing and learning together.
Mm.
Uh,
Women
that's
collaborating.
exactly. There's so much wisdom, and thank you
Mm.
so much for having me and for asking me those questions. As I speak to you, a lot of things
Mhm.
get clear as well. It's a good.
Yeah, that's often the way it unfolds, isn't it?
Mhm.
Yeah. Been my pleasure. So thank you. Have a great evening, and everyone at home who's watching this, have a wonderful day or evening or morning whenever you're watching this. Okay, bye.
Bye.